Hello everybody, welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading. Today we shall be discussing the Hindu newspaper dated 17th of November 2018 of the New Delhi edition. The topics to be discussed today has been presented on the screen. Timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. Let us begin our today's discussion. This particular article appears on page number 11. The title of the article is "The State Bank of India sells over 400 crore electoral bonds." This particular article deals with the electoral bonds which were notified by the government in order to improve the transparency in the political funding of elections in India. Hence, this particular article shall be important from the perspective of GS Paper 2 Governance under the subsection Salient Features of Representation of People's Act. It is to be noted here that this particular section of your syllabus deals with the electoral reforms in India. Before analyzing this particular article, let us first look into the background. As you know, the political parties in India accept donations from the individuals as well as corporates. However, one main problem with respect to political funding of elections in India is that there is lack of transparency with respect to these fundings. For example, according to data compiled by an NGO known as Association for Democratic Reforms, almost 70% of the income of the political parties comes from unknown sources. Further, according to a report submitted by the 255th Law Commission, this lack of transparency in political funding gives a scope for the corporate entities in India to influence the government policies, which is referred to as the crony capitalism. Now, this lack of transparency in the political funding of elections has led to innumerable problems. For example, it has given scope for the flow of black money. It enables the big corporate entities as well as super rich individuals to influence the government policies. And finally, it goes against the spirit of democracy, since the interests of the common man are superseded by the interest of the big corporates as well as the super rich. It is behind this particular background the Government of India introduced the electoral bonds in the budget 2017 in order to improve the transparency in the political funding of elections. So as part of this video analysis, we shall mainly focus on three aspects. Firstly, we'll understand as to what are electoral bonds and how these bonds work. Secondly, how these electoral bonds improve the transparency of electoral funding in India. And lastly, we'll analyze as to whether the electoral bonds have been able to fulfill the government's stated objective of improving transparency. Now coming to the concept of electoral bonds, any corporate entity or an individual who is willing to donate money to a political party can buy a electoral bond from a designated bank such as State Bank of India. And this electoral bond gets deposited into the bank account of the concerned political party. Further, it is to be noted that the donations under the electoral bonds can be made only to the eligible political parties. And according to the government notification, the eligible political parties include those political parties which secure at least 1% of the votes in the most recent Lok Sabha or the Assembly elections. This is mainly done in order to ensure that the non-serious political parties are not able to misuse the provisions of the electoral bonds. Further, you need to note that the electoral bonds are different from the corporate bonds. As you know, the corporate bonds are bought by an individual in order to lend his money to a corporate entity. However, the electoral bonds are bought by an individual or a corporate entity in order to donate money to a concerned political party. Further, the corporate bonds carry interest. However, there is no concept of interest on the electoral bonds. And these electoral bonds are in the form of the promissory notes. What this means is the designated bank remains a custodian of the donor funds until the time the political party redeems the electoral bonds. Further, according to government notification, the electoral bonds cannot be bought by using cash. They can be bought only through the digital payment or issue of check. This provision has been included by the government mainly in order to improve the transparency. And with respect to denomination of the electoral bonds, they can be issued in the multiples of 1000, 10,000, 1 lakh, 10 lakh, 1 crore. And usually the maturity of the electoral bond is 15 days. That is, the concerned political party has to redeem this particular bond from the designated bank within the next 15 days. And one of the most important aspect related to electoral bond is with respect to the identity of the donor. So when a corporate or an individual buys an electoral bond, the identity of such buyers is not known to the political party. However, the identity is known only to the designated bank. So the two most important aspects which one should know with respect to electoral bond is with respect to the identity of the donor, and secondly with respect to the eligibility of the political parties to receive the donation under the electoral bonds. So these are some of the aspects which one should know with respect to the concept of the electoral bonds. Let us now understand as to what are the advantages of electoral bonds, as well as analyze various issues with respect to political funding of elections in India. Now coming to the debate about the electoral bonds, let us first understand as to how electoral bonds have improved transparency with respect to political funding. Now firstly, as we have discussed, the electoral bonds can be bought only by using digital payment or issue of checks, and use of cash is prohibited. This particular provision checks the flow of black money during the elections. And secondly, as the bank follow the know your customer norms, the bank would have the idea about the identity of the donor, leading to greater transparency. Secondly, the electoral bonds would also bring about transparency in the functioning of political parties. This is because the electoral bonds can be encashed into the bank account, which is in turn monitored by the Election Commission. And secondly, the political parties are under obligation to disclose the total amount of donations received under the electoral bonds. Thus, it can be stated that as against the present system, under the electoral bonds, we are able to capture the identity of the donor, the political party who receives the donations, the total amount of donations received by a political party, and finally, the nature of expenditure undertaken by a political party. So, because of these four aspects, one can say that the electoral bonds have brought about greater transparency in the present system. However, in spite of this, there are certain issues in the political funding of elections even after the introduction of electoral bonds. Let us discuss these issues one by one. Now coming to the first issue here, it is to be noted here that in spite of the existence of electoral bonds, the individuals can make cash donations to the political parties up to Rs 2000. And these cash donations are not required to be disclosed by the political parties. Hence, it is being said that this particular provision of cash donations can still be misused by certain individuals. The second issue is with respect to the recent amendment carried out for the Foreign Contribution and Regulation Act rules. Now, this particular amendment enables the political parties in India to accept the donations from the foreign companies. So, this particular provision can enable the foreign companies to influence the government policies through the political funding. Now with respect to the third issue, earlier there used to be a limit on the political donation by a company, and this particular limit was the 7.5% of the total profits of a company. That means a company in India was not allowed to give more than 7.5% of its net profits in a year in a form of political donation. However, according to a recent amendment carried out by the government, this particular limit of 7.5% has been done away with. Now this particular provision gives a scope for the companies in India to give a higher amount of their profits to the political parties, and thus such companies will be in a position to influence the policies of the political parties in India. So these are some of the aspects which one should know with respect to the debate about the electoral bonds in India. So based on the discussion which we had so far, this would be a prelims question for the practice. Please go through this particular question and give your answer in the comment section given below. Similarly, a mains question for your practice would be, the issuance of electoral bonds in India has led to improvement in the transparency of funding of elections in India. However, there are some concerns which still remain to be discussed. Now you can try writing answer to this particular question by going to the video analysis. So having discussed all the aspects related to this particular article, let us now move to the next article. The next article appears on page number 18. The title of the article is Kilogram Gets a New Definition. Now this particular article highlights about the recent changes being made to the definition of kilogram by an international agency known as International Bureau of Weights and Measures. Hence, this particular article becomes important from the perspective of prelims, under the subsection General Science. Before analyzing this particular article, let us first look into the background. An international institution known as the International Bureau of Weights and Measures has recently made changes to the international system of units, which is commonly referred to as SI. Now, this international system of units is a legal system of units which is in use across the world, and these recent changes include the changes in the definition of some of the basic system of units such as kilogram, ampere, Kelvin and mole. And these changes in the definition of these SI units would come into effect on 20th of May 2019, which is observed across the world as the World Meteorology Day. So as part of this video analysis, we shall be focusing on mainly three aspects. Firstly, we'll understand certain details related to the international system of units. Secondly, we'll understand the recent changes being made to the definition of these SI units and also understand the rationale for the changes. And lastly, we'll discuss certain basic details related to the International Bureau of Weights and Measures. Now coming to the details related to the international system of units. Now the SI units is a globally agreed system of measurements which may be used for the measurement of the physical size, temperature or time. And having a globally agreed system of measurements ensure that the unit of measurements remain comparable and consistent across the countries in the world. And the SI units basically consist of 7 basic units and a number of derived units from these basic units. And these 7 basic units include meter, kilogram, second, ampere, Kelvin, mole and candela. Now all the 7 basic units form the current international system of units. Let us now look into the changes being made to these SI units presently. Let us understand about the changes being made to the definition of kilogram. Now earlier the kilogram was defined in terms of physical standard, wherein 1 kilogram was equal to the international prototype of kilogram, which is essentially a cylinder of platinum and iridium jar locked up near Paris. And this physical prototype of kilogram was also known as the Grand K. The image of this international prototype of kilogram has been shown on the screen for your reference. So this particular prototype was used as a reference for 1 kg. The International Bureau of Weights and Measures has now decided to redefine kilogram in terms of physical constant known as the Planck constant. It is to be noted here that since the Planck constant is a physical constant, it remains comparable and consistent across the world. And the main reasons as to why the definitional changes have been brought about include the danger of damage to the international prototype of kilogram. Secondly, the international prototype cannot be used routinely for the fear of wear and tear. And thirdly, the IPK may collect dust from the atmosphere, due to which there could be lack of consistency in the measurement of kilogram. Now because of these three reasons, the International Bureau of Weights and Measures has decided to redefine the kilogram in terms of physical constant instead of a physical standard. Similarly, apart from kilogram, the definitions of ampere, Kelvin and mole have also undergone changes, wherein ampere would be redefined in terms of the electron's charge, the Kelvin would be redefined in terms of the Boltzmann constant, and mole would be redefined based on the Avogadro constant. So these are the 4 main definitional changes which have been brought about by the International Bureau of Weights and Measures. However, it is to be noted that the definition of meter, standard and candela have remained the same. So these are some of the aspects which one should know with respect to the recent changes made to the definition of SI units. Now coming to the details related to the International Bureau of Weights and Measures. This particular international organization is also referred by its French initialism known as BIPM, and it is an intergovernmental organization, and it has been set up under the Metric Convention, which has been adopted by the member countries in the year 1875. So as part of this convention, the member countries decided to act together on all the matters related to the measurement standards. And BIPM reports to the International Committee on Weights and Measures, and this particular international committee in turn works under the supervision of the General Conference of Weights and Measures. So these are some of the aspects which one should know with respect to the International Bureau of Weights and Measures. So based upon the discussion which we had so far, this would be a prelims question for the practice. Please go through this particular question and give your answer in the comment section given below. So having analyzed all the aspects related to this particular article, let us now move to the next article. Now this particular article appears on page number 1. The title of the article is Andhra Pradesh West Bengal Withdraw General Consent to CBI. This particular article talks about the issue of general consent given to CBI in order to investigate cases of corruption in the state. Hence, this particular article shall be important from the perspective of GS paper 2 governance. Let us first understand the concept of the general consent before understanding this particular article. Now, the Central Bureau of Investigation has been established under the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act 1946. Under this particular act, the Central Bureau of Investigation exercises its jurisdiction over Delhi and other union territories. However, in order to investigate the cases of corruption in the states, it would require the general consent from the respective state governments. And such a general consent is routinely given by the states for a period ranging from 6 months to 1 year. Now, this particular article has highlighted that the state governments of Andhra Pradesh and West Bengal have withdrawn the general consent given to the CBI, which means that the Central Bureau of Investigation will not be able to automatically investigate cases of corruption in these two states. Now what this means is, in future, the Central Bureau of Investigation would be required to seek permission from these two state governments on a case-to-case basis. Now the main difference here is that earlier, the CBI was given permission for a period ranging from 6 months to 1 year. However, now, in future, the CBI would have to seek permission for every particular case related to the respective state governments. So these are some of the aspects which one should know with respect to this particular article. So based on the discussion which we had so far, this would be a prelims question for the practice. Please go through this particular question and give your answer in the comment section given below. With this, let us now move to the next article. Now this particular article appears on page number 6. The title of the article is Unnecessary, Destabilizing and Expensive. This particular article focuses on India's nuclear triad, and hence this particular article becomes important from the perspective of GS paper 3 under the subsection Security Challenges. Before analyzing this particular article, let us first look into the background. Now recently, India inducted a indigenously built nuclear weapon armed submarine known as INS Arihant, and this induction of INS Arihant led to completion of nuclear triad, which means that now India has become capable to launch the nuclear weapons through land, water and air. However, the author of this particular article highlights that the induction of INS Arihant was unnecessary, destabilizing and expensive. So as part of this video analysis, firstly we'll understand the doctrine of mutually assured destruction, and secondly we'll understand the role of the INS Arihant in the current security scenario. Now coming to the doctrine of the mutually assured destruction. Now this particular doctrine explains as to why a nuclear armed country resists itself from the first strike of nuclear weapons against other nuclear armed country. This is because the first strike of nuclear weapons by a country eventually leads to its destruction as well. So this is the main principle behind the mutually assured destruction doctrine. Let us understand this by an example. Now let's say if an enemy country decides to launch a devastating the nuclear first strike on another nuclear weapon armed country. Now such a nuclear first strike may lead to destruction of the land-based nuclear missiles in the other country. So in response to the destruction caused, the country under attack may in turn launch the nuclear weapons against the enemy country by using the submarine. For example, if India is under attack by an enemy country, and if such an attack leads to destruction of its land-based nuclear missiles, then India would have the capability to launch the nuclear missiles through the use of submarine. However, the large-scale usage of such nuclear weapons would cause the complete annihilation or the destruction of both the countries. So because of the fear of this annihilation or the destruction, both the nuclear armed countries would desist from conducting the first strike of nuclear weapons. So the importance of the nuclear armed submarine such as Arihant can be understood from the fact that the other countries would desist from attacking India. However, the author of this particular article highlights that the induction of INS Arihant was unnecessary. So it is in this particular context, let us understand the viewpoint of the author. The author of this particular article highlights that both Pakistan and China presently do not have the capability to destroy India's land-based nuclear missiles. Because of this, the idea of the retaliatory second strike by India by using the nuclear weapons launched from INS Arihant does not arise in the first place, since both Pakistan and China do not have the capability to destroy India's land-based nuclear missiles. Secondly, the author highlights that the range of the nuclear missile which can be launched from INS Arihant is only 750 km. Now, using this nuclear missile, India can target Pakistan. However, it cannot target all the parts of China. Now, these are the viewpoints put forward by the author with respect to the induction of INS Arihant. So, having discussed all the aspects related to this particular article, let us now move to the next article. The next article appears on page number 5. The title of the article is Maternity Leave, Government for Incentive Scheme. This particular article talks about the challenges with respect to the implementation of Maternity Benefit Act. Hence, this particular article shall be important from the perspective of GS Paper 2 Governance under the subsection Government Policies and Interventions. Before understanding this particular article, let us first look at the highlights of the Maternity Benefit Amendment Act 2017. Now, this particular amendment has been brought in order to protect the employment of women during the time of maternity, wherein under this particular amendment, the woman shall be provided with the paid maternity leave, and this paid maternity leave shall be applicable to all the mothers up to 26 weeks. It is also applicable on adoption of a child below the age of 3 months. Further, the paid maternity leave shall also be provided for the commissioning mothers. The commissioning mother is a biological mother who uses her egg to create an embryo to be implanted in other women, which in other terms is also referred to as surrogacy. So, a biological mother in case of surrogacy can also get paid maternity leave from the company. Further, this particular amendment is applicable to all the establishments which employ 10 or more people. Now, this particular article highlights that the private sector in India has been apprehensive in providing paid maternity leave to its women employees, due to which it has been forcing the women employees to quit. Further, some of the private sector establishments have stopped hiring women employees. Because of these reasons, it is in turn adversely affecting the employment of women in India. So, in order to address this implementation challenge, the Government of India has proposed that it would bear the cost of the maternity leave wages for at least 7 weeks. And in order to bear this additional cost, the government is designing an incentive scheme for the private sector. However, the design of this particular scheme is still work in progress. So let us wait and watch as to how the government would move forward on this particular incentive scheme. So these are some of the aspects which one should know with respect to this particular article. So based on the discussion which we had so far, this would be a prelims question for the practice. Please go through this particular question and give your answer in the comment section given below. With this, we have come to end of today's discussion. Now let us look at the question for the day.